Welcome back to the True Sports Physical Therapy Podcast. I got a great guest for you guys to listen to and learn from today. His name is Neil Trickett. He is a physical therapist himself. He actually owned a clinic for 8 years before an exit, at which point he went into creating practice promotions. Practice promotions, you've probably seen them all over the place. They work with PT practices from startup, meaning, hey, I just want to open my own place. He's going to teach you, Neil Trickett is going to teach you how to market your clinic effectively. And he works with companies that have 1,200 locations. So it's massive. It's throughout the US and Canada. And he does an outstanding job in this conversation that you're about to hear of how to allocate your dollars. How many dollars should you allocate towards marketing? And also, what do you do with that marketing budget? How much of it should go to social media? How much of it should just go to Google SEO and everything in between? I learned a ton. I actually asked him at the end, what could True Sports be doing better from a marketing perspective? And he gave me some awesome insights that I'm already tracking down. You guys are going to learn a ton. Make sure you share it with all of your PT buddies. There's something in here for every single physical therapist, whether you own your own place, whether you work with or for someone else. You can learn a ton in terms of creating your own brand. So I look forward to everyone's feedback. Let us know what you love. You can shoot me a DM, True Sports PT. Also, quick shout out, if you're looking for an outstanding PT clinic to work for and with, we are your place. We are always looking to hire. We have onboarded like 15 new PTs in the last 6 months. So excited to keep that going. Just again, shoot me a DM, True Sports PT on Instagram, and we'll hook you up with exactly how to apply. It's an awesome process. You're going to learn a ton, even if it's not an awesome fit. But if you think you're an awesome fit, please look us up and apply. We're always growing. We're always adding, making sports physical therapy and True Sports the best place to both rehab and work. So without further ado, here's Neil Trickett. Welcome back to the True Sports Physical Therapy Podcast. We got Neil Trickett with us. Neil, thank you so much for joining us. I'm really excited to dive into marketing clinics, how we grow our awesome offerings wherever you are in this country. There's so much that I hope to learn from you today. So welcome to the pod, man.
Oh, great to be here. Thank you, Yoni. I know we've actually had conversations many years ago and connected with each other before. So it's great to reconnect.
Was I nice to you then?
Yeah.
Was I nice to you then when we talked?
You were super nice.
Very good. Always makes me nervous. Okay, let's dive right in. When you're looking at clinics and you look at clinics across the entire country, trying to grow, trying to market, we went to school to help people in front of us. You have developed a niche for yourself where you help people tell that story and promote the hell out of our abilities. So tell me what the biggest marketing mistakes you see private PT clinics making, and what should we be doing instead of the mistakes we're making?
Absolutely. Great question. Just briefly about me, I'm actually a physical therapist, and I work on practice promotions now. We've helped clinics grow for the last 14 years all over the United States and Canada. And right now we support over 1,200 clinics across the US and Canada. So everybody from a startup clinic all the way through to 160 location practice that we support. And so there's just different needs at different levels when it comes to marketing and business. But there is a commonality that I see from a clinic to make that growth. And I would say the couple of fundamental mistakes that I see practice owners make, which is just tried and true of business as a whole, is that we try to do everything ourselves, right? We become the bottleneck in our own business. And so when it comes to, taking your practice to that next level, you have to really look at what are the things that I'm doing as the operator owner. Am I doing too much, or do I have enough people to support me, or am I using outside help? And so one of the things that I've learned in business over the years from growing my company, as well as other practices, is that the bigger that you get, the more you actually use more consultants and support people who are knowledgeable in those key areas to help you leverage that talent and that knowledge to expand your business. So I'd say that's one of the fundamental mistakes, is that people keep doing things themselves for too long and you become the bottleneck in the business. The other thing that I see as a mistake is that,
first of all, Neil, I've been there, dude. So you're on the money. I am the number one bottleneck at True Sports, or at least I was for a long time. So I think that totally rings true. Go ahead.
Yeah, and we all are, right?
Yeah.
We know it best. We figure things out. That's kind of who we are as entrepreneurs. And you just have to recognize that's normal, right? It's normal. It's okay. But if you recognize it and you work towards systematizing your business and bringing in the best talent to help you implement those systems, that's your key to growth, right? And then the other thing I would say from a big mistake that I see practices, the top 10% of practices that we work with that are crushing it in whatever the economy is doing, but they're like really crushing it. And I see you do this with True Sports too. Like you've done a phenomenal job with this, is investing in your marketing, like looking at your marketing as a key component of your business, because it is the driver of business into your practice. And so if you're not putting enough attention or investment in that, you end up choking the business and its capability to grow. And we have to look at marketing across the spectrum of like, how does marketing help us grow and expand our business? One is, of course, getting new patients into the practice, but also it's a way of supercharging word of mouth referrals. And then it's also a key component of hiring and attracting the best people to come work for you. Because if you're really good at your marketing, you have an amazing online presence, you have this amazing, word of mouth, people start to gravitate towards you, and the right kind of people towards you. And I would say too, again, this is something I see you do very well, and that is, how are you leveraging marketing to improve the profitability of your practice? And that comes with positioning yourself as the go-to expert compared to all the different kinds of solutions out there. And the branding and the way that you look and feel, the professionalism of your practice, also attracts higher paying patients, cash pay patients. You can also promote and market different service lines in your practice for more cash-based services. And that's really the direction that our profession is going into the future.
Yeah, I'll tell you, like, so much of that hits home for me. When I started, I felt like I had the ability, my reputation, my network, I should say, more importantly, I could fill X amount of therapists. Like, I knew I could generate more business than I could treat, but I felt like there was a cap, especially once we started opening multiple locations in multiple geographics. Like, we have clinics that I walk into in Delaware, in Pennsylvania, and I walk in and the receptionist says, "Sir, do you have an appointment?" They have no idea who the hell I am. It's always humbling. I appreciate that. But that really translates to my inability to develop referrals in Pennsylvania. The doctors there don't know who I am, or, by the way, even who True Sports is. So now I started having to look at, I got to market this thing very differently than it was just when it was just me, couple PTs, and me knowing all the docs and me knowing all the trainers. That's when I really started outsourcing and tried to gain an understanding of how much do I need to allocate towards these offerings, towards marketing as a whole. So give me some norms. What do you recommend? And does it differ depending on how big you are? What % of your revenue should be allocated towards marketing, period?
Yeah, great question. And it's an area that I see practices underspend all the time, and they wonder why they're not really getting to the goals that they're trying to get to.
That's what my marketing agency says, but I always think they're just trying to sell me on stuff. So tell me how I discern.
Good thing. So I will say this: marketing is an expense when it doesn't produce.
Yep.
Otherwise, it should be an investment. And with every investment, there should be a return, multiple return of your money that you put into it. And for marketing, you should be anywhere from 5 to 10 times ROI for what you're putting into it. Now, as far as an expenditure for your business, you have to look at, again, the marketing is your throttle for your business. So it depends on how aggressive you want to grow for the year. And if you have new locations that you're opening, you're going to have to put more investment into getting that clinic well known in that particular area, because it's not going to be well known in that particular area. So there's times when you have to shift and move your marketing budget. So it's never like a fixed thing, but a range. Even the Small Business Association recommends this is typically anywhere, it can be from 5 to 10% of your gross revenues towards marketing, depending again on what you're trying to achieve. And I see a lot of clinics actually in like the 2% range or less. And again, it's holding them back, but they have that fear that I'm putting money into marketing. I don't know if it's working. That's the number one thing, is like, I don't know if my marketing is working. So you don't have the right data, the right systems, the right tracking capabilities to have confidence in your marketing. So that's something you need to put into play. But that growth will really come if you allocate enough towards your goals.
Yep.
And so I recommend a clinic, typically, if they're going to be fairly busy, to keep everybody humming along, keep things moving, have sustained growth, is around 5%, 5 to 8%. And that's what most healthcare practices, whether you're a physician or you're a PT, most, growing healthcare practices are usually in that 5 to 8% range. And that does include marketing salaries. So if you do have a marketing director or someone who's a physician liaison or something like that, you want to include that in your marketing expense.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I was going to ask a dumb question, which is, does it matter? Does that percent matter based upon how many patients you're seeing per hour? We treat at a very slow pace. We treat one-on-one for 45 minutes every single time, despite every business consultant that I've spoken to saying, like, what the hell are you doing? Everyone else is seeing 2 to 3 an hour. You should do that. It's going to increase your revenue by 30, 40%. But to your point, if it's a percent of revenue, it doesn't really matter. You're basing it
really
on,
matter,
yeah. You base it on kind of what's coming in. Now, how do you divvy that up? How do I spend that 5 to 8%? Digital, you said salaries. Then there's grassroots marketing. How do I know where to start?
Yeah, and it's going to vary depending on where you are in your journey of your practice. So, if you've got a couple providers working with you, that's going to be different compared to if you've got multiple locations, and the complexity of everything goes higher the bigger that you get, which I'm sure you're very familiar with.
Now you tell me, yeah.
So again, this is one of those things that I see, which is really fascinating to me, is as we work with enterprise clinics. There's some clinics that are really advanced in their marketing, and that you can tell they've got the complexity, they've got the personnel in place to make all these different things happen. And then there's others, which is like they got there through acquisition and they really didn't catch up with the complexity that's needed from their marketing. And then they start to falter in some of their clinics and have, underperforming locations. And that's always a big challenge with multiple location clinics. Yeah, kind of circling back to, your question there is really looking at, how are you going to allocate this is really around your needs there. And so I would say that, as a smaller clinic, you always want to promote yourself bigger than you are. That's just tried and true wisdom there, is that if you can set the bar higher than what you actually are within the clinic, and the perception of how big you are, that's gonna grow your clinic, right? And so when we're just starting out, we might need to do things that are lower cost, right? So we might need to really work on our relationships with people in the community, thought leaders. If we can meet with physicians, things like that. That's how can we build our word of mouth and get things off the ground without too much expense? But then we can do some simple things too from a digital presence. So we can definitely have a very good website. That's a great starting point there. How can we leverage online profiles and build our digital presence, social media? That's things that we can post ourselves and take, success stories from within the clinic. So there's a lot of things that you can do yourself at a low level, but then as you grow, then again, you need to dial that up more and more and more.
And okay, so you raise a good point, and one that I definitely swung and missed on early on. How much should you're just starting a clinic, you're by yourself. How much should one spend on their website?
Yeah, so I think, again, the good thing to do here, if you're like a startup, is projecting out, okay, where do I need my revenues to be in this first year? Mm-hmm. Have the realization that you're also that first year is the most percentage that you're ever going to spend on marketing in your practice, because you got to get the thing off the ground. Mm-hmm. And so that can be, again, a big stumbling block, is if you're holding yourself back because you haven't allocated enough finance, loans or whatever you need to get really off the ground. So you might go with something that's a very inexpensive website. Looks okay, looks good, but in the long run, that's hurting you, right? Because your visibility online, it's not going to have the features or the functionality to really make you visible in searches online for customers. Do you have enough booking mechanisms and tracking capabilities and stuff through your website to get enough information out of it, like, where people are coming from and what's working there. So I would say, as far as spending on a website, it's going to be relative and again, what you want to try to achieve. So if you're just trying to really get off the ground, don't go super inexpensive, like trying to do it yourself through a Wix website or Squarespace.
Which is exactly what I did in my basement, designed my own goddamn Wix site, which got me like probably 0 leads. Okay, so I shouldn't have done that. What should I have done?
I would have found someone that knows the industry, right? That's definitely key. I mean, you can go with a local provider, but you have to do a lot more work then in terms of telling them what you want, what it to look like, and the copy and the content. And that's usually very overwhelming for a startup.
Yep.
They don't really know quite yet everything that they're trying to achieve and the people that they serve. And so if you go with someone that has, and there's definitely, within our industry, there's different providers and lower cost providers that could be a good startup for clinics. So I think that's a great starting point for a lot of clinics, is just working with someone who knows what they're doing when it comes to that at like a reasonable cost.
Okay. And so how important is using a PT specific marketing company? I mean, you said yourself, you're still a PT. You keep your license active. You grew and sold a clinic. How important is it to use something like Practice Promotions, your company, versus someone that is tried and true, but in a different industry?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I like to bring it back to dollars and cents, because that's what we're trying to achieve here in business, is helping people, but also at the end of the day, make enough money to have the lifestyle that we want and the freedom that we want. So when it comes to a website, what we're trying to achieve first is online discoverability, right? We want to be discovered in our community. We want to have people finding us and coming to visit us that never even thought about using us before. So that's number one. And then number two is actually website conversions. And what we mean by conversion is someone who actually visits your website and then turns into someone who's either booking an appointment or calling to schedule, that first evaluation. And so what we find is that industry standard is about 2% of the people that come to your website will actually turn into an appointment.
Yep.
Now, okay, if I get 1,000 people coming to my website, which is a lot, but 1,000 people come to my website, 2% of that is 20 new patients that my website produces. That's pretty awesome, right? But just a 2% increase in conversions doubles my number of new patients, right?
Yep.
From 2 to 4%. And so now I've got 40 new patients, and that's a game changer. So knowing what to do with the website, how to structure it. So a couple of things that we do, actually, we use AI to mimic how people's eyes track on the website. And that helps us, our designers, actually build websites where it's very easy for people to navigate with their eyes. They're going to go to the key areas to click on different things. So that's just one example. Mm-hmm. The other is using heat maps to look at behavior. So we've done a lot of research in terms of how people behave on websites. How do they scroll on certain things? What colors are they attracted to? How's the navigation layout going to make it easy for them to stay on your website? And the longer that they stay, the more that they're going to convert into a new patient. So, industry trend is 2%. We're at like 8.3% conversions. Now that's a massive difference there.
Yeah.
Just from not adding more people to the website, just making your website convert better.
Yep. Okay. So, but everything you mentioned is not PT specific, right? It's digital marketing knowledge. So do I need a Neil Trickett who is a PT to be running this? Like, tell me what the value add there is for Practice Promotions.
Oh, good point. Yeah. So the key there is obviously there's structure and all the digital stuff and the technologies, right?
Yep.
But you're talking to people, right? You're talking to patients. And so you need to have the knowledge of being able to connect and say things, write things in the way that people will connect and understand what you do in your treatments to what's going to do to solve their problems. And that's just something that's hard to do if you don't know the industry.
Yeah. Yeah, right? For sure. I mean, so shout out to Defiance Analytics. That's who we use for our web design. That's who we use for all of our digital marketing strategies. And they've been great. And I say that not because in the background of this podcast is one of their lead developers, but they really have been amazing. And, it's in their name, like their ability to track return on ad spend, their ability to track cost of acquisition comes from years in the digital marketing industry, not in physical therapy. Now, it has taken us a little bit to educate them on here's what a PT patient might be looking for, et cetera, to get them up to speed there. So what are some must-haves from a PT marketing specific point of view that a website has to have to convert visitors into patients?
Yeah, so obviously visuals is key, and I think the top performing clinics that we work with, what they do really well is they're able to get the imagery, the videography from within the clinic. You got to tell the stories. You got to showcase who you are, the professionalism of your practice. And if you're just reliant purely on stock photography or videography, it doesn't convey who you are. And so people know it, they see it, but when they see a lot of great photography and imagery, it's, picture tells 1,000 words, right?
Yep.
So then that's key. And then the next part I'd say was having the right headlines, because that's where so people usually read the headline, the title that goes along with the visual, and then they read the kind of sub headlines underneath that. Am I going to take the time to read anything else on here? So you got to have the right phraseology that connects with them there. And then that first 1 or 2 sentences of that first paragraph is where you're going to go, again, is this hooking me enough to really speak to me? And what a mistake here can be is that as a practice, we like to talk about ourselves a lot and what makes us great and what our techniques are and all this kind of stuff. That is really secondary to patients. They don't really understand that or care about that as much as what can you do to help me get out of this pain now and help me understand my pain. So if you can speak to why would they be having, trouble or instability years after an MCL tear or something like that, right? If you can speak to those kind of things, you become the expert as they're reading through it, and that makes their decision process much easier in choosing you to help them.
Yeah. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. I want to backtrack just a little bit and talk about what you mentioned in terms of having the right infrastructure to track your ad spend or to track your marketing dollars. What's the best way to understand, and how dialed in can you really get your marketing analytics to tell you exactly where that patient is coming from? I'll give you a quick example. So I get a report. First of all, I get a report every single day of how many new patients signed up at True Sports, what locations they came from, who referred them. I know what I am spending every single day, company-wide and clinic specifically, to know what is our return on investment there for the spend. What do we do with the patient who goes to the doctor? The doctor says, listen, you got to try out this guy with a weird name. He owns True Sports. Go to that guy. They go to the internet. They click on the ad. Now I have spent for the ad. The marketing company is going to tell me, we got you that referral. I'm going to tell you, no. The doctor got me that referral. They just used the link. How do we parse this out? It seems to be very gray.
It is gray. And I think that's just something to understand in marketing, is that in today's world with the technologies that we have, social media, the platforms that everybody's on, you have to have multiple touch points in order to make a decision. So you got to look at the patient behavior. They might have heard from their doctor that they go see someone, right? And a lot of times, if you have a good relationship with the doctor, that's fantastic. They're going to say, go to this, go to True Sports, right? But a lot of times they're going to say, if they're not within a network or in their area, the referral coordinator is going to give you a list of people to look up or call, right?
Yep.
What do? They go to Google, they start searching and doing their due diligence. They look at reviews and they check out your website. And then, they may go to look at their social media channels. So it's very difficult to say that one exact thing caused that person to take an action. And that's why you have to build a very robust marketing machine and system where you're hitting all these different platforms that you can be everywhere. And that's what's going to help people make greater decisions. Now you can, like you said, you're like at the top, in terms of like your reporting and things that you get. A lot of clinics are just not there. They're not even doing like call tracking and things like that. So you need to have call tracking in place. You need to have ad tracking, and these kind of things can really tell you the behaviors of people who are clicking through from that digital aspect, how they come in. And then you can also have systems where, like your front desk, as they actually become that new patient and they show up, click on a button and it confirms that that lead actually became a new patient. So you can get really dialed into things, but I think overall, like, we've got to realize that nothing is a super exact science when it comes to this, because of people's behaviors is all over the place in today's market.
Yeah, I think at the very least, if you're getting that data, it gives you a benchmark, and you have to like bake into the fact that, hey, there is gray here. There is going to be the doctor referral that's sent to us, but the marketing analytics are going to show that they got it. You bake that in, but at least I can look back a year trailing and say, hey, what I do in March, what am I doing in this March? How is it different? Are we trending in the right direction? At least it gives you some wherewithal. You're making a great point. If you aren't tracking where your patients are coming from, you're in the dark. You just don't know. And shame on your marketing agency for letting you do that, because it's just going to build distrust because you don't really know where it is. So I think that goes a long way to try to understand where the patient's coming from. Is everyone doing their job? Am I treating the patient well? By the way, that gets into a different analytics piece when you look at our clinical analytics. How long does it take us to get a patient better? How long is an ACL with us? How long is a rotator cuff repair with us? Are we falling short of that? What are we doing that's causing us to fall short of that, et cetera? By the who is good at seeing an ACL for 9 months versus who's seeing them for 4 months, and then they can't hold them. What can we do to put in? But if you don't have the numbers, you can't coach around that. And I think it's just really important to have the data and have someone who's going to hold your hand. Defiance Analytics has held my hand along this journey to say, here are your KPIs. Here's why you care about these numbers. And we're going a little bit further. Like, we're going into a deep dive where once a month we get together with our regional directors. It's myself, our COO, and individual regional directors to look at our numbers from previous month to say, how are we doing? And by the way, how does it stack up to the rest of the clinics? How's your region doing? How's this clinic doing? Who do we need to coach? How do we coach around that? Once, our COO, Tim Stone, always says, once you put on a true sports jersey, you're on our team. We have to be able to coach you and make you better. And you cannot do that without numbers. I think that should be the number one takeaway to all the PTs that are listening to this podcast and conversation in their commute into work. Should take away, it's, if you don't have your numbers, you don't know how well your business is doing, and you cannot improve if you don't have those baselines. So I think that's imperative. You mentioned how important it is to have something as simple as actual in-office photography, videography. Give me rubber meets the road. How do you facilitate that for your clinics?
Yeah, so there's actually a lot of online services now where it's just like your Uber, right? They actually have like Uber basically for photographers. So that's very easy to use different online services like that. It doesn't cost a whole lot, probably like $500 or less. And you can get a wealth of different pictures in a couple hours in your clinic. The other part of it too is just spontaneous stuff. So, social media, things can be dressed down a little bit. It doesn't have to be so, professional on there. Obviously, the better professional it is, the better you're, going to be visually. But, you can just simply have a designated phone in the clinic, right? That someone can pick up, take some, pictures, of course, with permission, videos, movement, things like that. Then you have the ammo to use in your marketing, whether it's on your website, whether it's in social media. But that's where the fundamental problem is, that a lot of clinics just don't think about that or have, the effort into it, and then they don't have the ammunition to win the war.
Yeah. No, I think that's well stated. I will say it's been interesting, like, as we've gone through our social media journey, to learn what hits, what becomes viral, what doesn't. And a lot of times it's the unfiltered, unedited posts that do really well. And I'll turn around and be like, why the hell did I pay this photographer or marketing agency to come in and take this beautiful highlight reel when it does better when I just pick up a phone and talk to it? So it's like trying to understand what resonates with your audience goes a really long way. And again, you have to have the numbers to be able to track that. How would you parse out your digital marketing effort between website and social media? How do you tell what to spend on?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think the key thing here is we get focused on like what media should we use,
Yep.
what tool. I think first for a lot of clinics, it's coming back to what's a winning strategy for your clinic, and dial things in that are going to work in your particular market, and then start to really explore the different channels that you can leverage with that strategy, that message. So, for example, if you're not doing some of the key basics, right, which is first off online discoverability, and social media does fall into this category of online discoverability, but first off is how present are you in Google and different search engines and your online profiles and your maps and all this kind of stuff. If you're not up there and you're not on multiple spots on page one of Google, like you're not using Google Ads, like that's a key area to start, right? So online discoverability, if that's built out and you're doing very well there, then look at your social media strategy from maybe an advertising standpoint, like how can I get in front of more eyeballs, right? And kind of leverage that to bring more people in. So online discoverability is key. And then it's secondary is your website conversions. So that's really looking at, okay, what am I investing in my website? Am I up with the latest technologies there? Probably about every 3 years, you want to revamp your website because the coding changes so fast on the back end to compete with Google and all these different online things. And then third is patient marketing. So how are we leveraging retention, referrals from patients, and reactivations of past patients? So that's kind of like the 3 core things to focus on from a marketing strategy standpoint. And you can look at each one of those key areas and say, how well are we doing here? Right? Is our online discoverability poor? Well, I'm going to put some attention on that, right? And work with some people on it. Or, we seem to be getting a lot of traffic, right, to our website, but it doesn't seem like we're getting a lot of bookings through our website or calls from our website. Okay, let's put some attention on that. Or, you know what, we've been in business for a while. We have a pretty big patient list, but we don't get as many past patients back as we should, or we don't not getting that many patient referrals. Okay, let's put some attention on that. So I think that's a great place to start. And then understand I've got these different media and different tools to use to help on each one of these key areas.
Yeah. And all of that comes from your 5 to 8%?
Yeah.
Okay. And it's trying to figure out what bucket to put that 5 to 8% in based upon how well it's performing. That makes a lot of sense. You also said something that was really interesting, which is definitely something that I have like shifted my focus on, which was I used to be obsessed and solely obsessed with how do I generate new patients. That's all I wanted for my marketing. And it's still a huge piece. But now I've gotten to the point where it's, okay, how do I also generate applications and resumes? And that's one of the main drivers for why I'm like, why don't I start a podcast? And it's been amazing. Like the amount of resumes I get. So if you're listening and you're thinking about joining True Sports, send me a DM. We'll get your resume and loaded. But it's a different focus for the marketing to say, I don't just need patients. I also need therapists if I'm looking to grow. Some people aren't, but if I'm looking to grow my offering, and it's a totally different mindset. PTs want to hear something different than patients. You're speaking a different language. So it's like understanding your audience and where you want to reach out and grab people and who are those people. They're all revenue generators. New patients, PTs, they're all revenue generators. It's just understanding like kind of where to attack them. And I think that's where the value add of working with a PT like yourself to understand some of those things. And also, like you said, maybe I'm trying to grow my insurance business. Maybe I also want a cash offering. How do I determine how to attract those different leads? What's some advice there? How do I attract more cash business?
Yeah. So, I mean, it comes back to some of the simple basics too, is how are you positioned? How do you look? People who've got cash, right, and are looking for health and wellness, sports performance, whatever it may be, they're going to gravitate towards those slick looking businesses, right? That look professional, that have it together. I send my sons to sports performance, right, for their sports in high school, and the kind of you start to do your due diligence because you want to do something for them like this. You start to poke around online, and the clinics that you hear have a good reputation, and then you see that looks like they have a great online reputation and online look. that's what's you're gonna gravitate towards. So I'd say that, like, that's a key fundamental, is making sure that your whole digital presence and you look amazing online is what's going to help attract higher paying patients, cash-based patients. Some of it's pretty simple too, like, calling out the ideal insurances that you take. So instead of having like a giant list of insurances, have your key insurances that reimburse you better as part of your website. And that's something super simple to do, right? And then making sure that on your website, that if you're adding additional service lines, whether it's sports performance, whether it's certain technologies or lasers or whatever it may be that you're adding in there, you build that part of your website out so you can really use it as a landing page, or you can use it as a way to really sell that service before someone even comes in, right?
Yeah.
And then, of course, then you have your internal mechanisms with your staff and your therapist and recommending those type of cash services and what to benefit. But that's a sales process internally.
Does Practice Promotions consult on that piece?
Yeah, we actually work with a lot of clinics now that are, adding laser, sports performance, new fit, like all these different cash services that they're adding in. I really see the clinics that are doing well are the ones that have really embraced this hybrid model of insurance-based and cash value service lines to add into their business. And a lot of our practices that we work with in Canada, I think, have been ahead of this curve for a long time.
Socialized medicine will do that.
Yeah, because more people in the public that are used to going and paying for something. And so the clinics up there will typically have physio, they'll have sports, they'll have acupuncture, chiropractor, massage, like everything together under one roof. And the patients kind of like that because it's a one-stop shop and you have all this choice.
Yeah. How do you avoid the reluctance of a therapist to be a salesman?
In my practice, we actually did some coursework around this.
Okay.
And there was some training that we did with our therapists. We actually used an outside agency to come in and kind of help train our therapists. So it wasn't just coming from me, the boss, but it was good because it really helped them see that we're helping them get better, right? And it was always phrased from that standpoint. Like, if someone drops off the schedule, are you helping them? No, right? If you didn't get a patient fully better because they dropped out, are you helping them? No. Right. So you have to be really good at selling them, right? Selling them on their plan of care, what outcomes they're going to get. And so just kind of reframing it that way, that really just kind of brought down the barrier of being, oh, I hate sales, right? Yep. It was more like, you do it all day anyway, right? You just get better at what you're doing. Yep. And then it kind of clicked for a lot of our therapists when he heard it from that.
Yeah. I mean, we struggled in the past with that exact conversation, but around billing units, right? So if you're billing an insurance unit, if they hear me say, I need you to bill this amount of units, all they hear is a money grubbing boss who's saying, I need more. Whereas when it flips on the reverse and it's like, here's what we need to keep treating at 45 minutes. Here's the amount of revenue. Here's the amount of, do you guys like treating at 45 minutes? Do you like being in these awesome facilities where you can run, throw, jump, etc.? All of that comes at a cost. We need to maximize our billing. So no longer is it leadership wants to put more money in their pocket. It's they want to run the best place to work, not just rehab. And I think it's a total reframing, like you said. Great book. It's a great book, How to Reframe Your Brain by Scott Adams, who talks a lot about that. Like how to change your mindset around something. And it's pure, it's really honesty of why do we need to increase our billable units? It's so that we can provide a better service. I think that goes a long way.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I learned a phrase a long time ago, and that's, in the absence of data, people invent it.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're not explaining the cost of doing business to your therapist, like, hey, here's what it takes on an hourly basis for us to treat a patient, right? That it was, when I did that with our therapist, it was, you see their eyes widen, like they had no idea, right? They just think, hey, you're just paying for my salary.
Yeah, so much more.
Yeah. So I think that's a key thing, is just being clear, open and honest on certain things. You don't have to reveal all your books to them, but it's just like key things like that, so that they have that to operate with, and then you can have those other conversations because they'll make a lot more sense to them.
Yeah, I think like changing gears a little bit. I think one of the challenges in growing a clinic from one therapist to multiple locations or even multiple therapists is originally, and you'll see this with what people name their clinics. Like if I called my physical therapy clinic Yoni's PT or Rosenblatt Rehab, which I thought about for like 6 seconds, they only want to see me, right? And so how do I position myself that no, this is all an entire offering. When you come in, you're going to get as good of care, whether it doesn't matter who you see. And I want to like more pinpoint the question when you're marketing yourself on social media. How do I get away from it being all about me and it being about the company? Do you have any advice on that piece?
Yeah, and this is something I'm learning myself along the way as I'm in groups with other digital marketing agencies, and it's really fascinating to see how some of these agencies have thrived on social media. And we feel that in our business, we want to get to a position where we are delegating and we have people we trust that are running the business more for, parts of the business for us. And I think you still always need the captain of the ship, just kind of steering the vision of it. But when it comes to social media, people don't connect with companies like they do with people. And so, everybody knew who Steve Jobs was and was connected with him online, but you went to Apple, right, for the product, right? Or, Elon Musk, whatever, you're following that person online, but they've got multiple companies, right, that they have going on. So I think that's, if you're working on your social media presence and try to grow that, it has to be personal, right? But if they know that you're part or owner of this larger clinic, they might ask for you occasionally. You might get those come in, but then your front desk just handles it with, he doesn't see patients, this kind of thing. But I don't know, is that something that you've experienced when you've been doing social media?
So I definitely have. I currently don't have a personal Instagram, but I've toyed with it. I mean, part of it is I'm frankly exhausted by the social media space, right? I mean, it's all consuming, and we put a huge amount of work and effort into the True Sports PT brand on social media. But do people want to see the face of the CEO and what's he like? Our COO does an outstanding job with his individual feed. We have a therapist, Austin Kolish, who has an awesome following individually.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea is like, how do you get that to funnel back to True Sports? Because that's who's going to be seeing the patient. It's not necessarily Austin or Tim.
One thing I heard from an entrepreneur, it made a lot of sense to me, a very successful entrepreneur, and that is helping to build the personal brands of your staff. And so especially for your therapists, like, they may have a little bit more time or willingness to, and of course there's different people in your organization that have that capability, that want, to build their personal brand and develop themselves and grow. And they may be a good, co-director down the line or something like that. So can you help them develop their personal brand and kind of support them in some social media posting and stuff like that? The other aspect of it is from a owner perspective, you don't have to be on social media. And I think we get this pressure, like, oh my gosh, if I'm not like on social media and promoting myself out there like crazy, it's going to hurt my business. And that's not the reality, right? You got lots of other things that you are working on, can do, and can be successful at to have a very successful practice. So this feeling of like, I have to be all over the present and omnipresent on social media and spend hours and hours a day doing that, that's not really needed.
Okay. Well, that makes me feel a little bit better. So I appreciate that. We talked a lot about Google. We talked a lot about websites and how they live on Google and how Google reads them. We talked about social media. Where does AI, ChatGPT, how is that changing your life at Practice Promotions?
Well, we're using it a ton for all kinds of stuff from a digital standpoint, whether it's again from helping to design websites to, content and themes there, organization. I think, gosh, it's just crazy to think back like 2 or 3 years ago where it was like, what's AI?
Yep.
Right. And here we are today. And I think for business owners out there, the ones that really embrace it are going to be the ones that move forward with the new economy. Right. So you do have to look at how can you leverage, how can you incorporate it into your business. And then the other aspect is I kind of look, how is that changing how people search for things too? That's kind of changing a little bit. We're seeing a little bit more of people asking ChatGPT, who's the best PT in town, kind of thing.
Yeah. What do you do for that? How do you
Yeah.
get placed on ChatGPT?
Yeah. So a lot of it actually comes from your content. So that's where it's really critical to be putting out content, right? And having help to put out content. So content through your website is key, and especially when it comes to Google, in the AI, that's called AEO now, so answer engine optimization, and then you've got SEO, which is search engine optimization. So those kind of two things, but that's the new thing is the AI part at the top of Google searches, which doesn't pull up necessarily if you're searching for a physical therapist near me. It's not going to pull up for that. It's going to pull up when he's like, tell me about physical therapy. That's when AI would pull up, right? So it's different kind of searches, but like if you have a search that someone's putting out there of saying, hey, how can I get faster in running, right? Or how can I prevent running injuries? Like that would be something in a Google search, and AI will come up there. It'll scrape whatever websites to get that information. So if you have on your website a great page about running injuries and how to prevent running injuries, you have multiple blogs around that particular topic or theme, then there's a greater chance with that kind of structure of that page, as well as the content on that page, that'll get pulled into the AI response. And we see that happening with clinics, is that the ones that do, we're helping them with their blogs, we're helping with their content, they are getting scraped and pulled into those AI responses. So we have to, as owners, realize in our marketing that we have to produce more content in order to be part of these new type of AI searches.
Gotcha. It's interesting the way all of that works and understanding what AI is scraping and how to get found, I guess, by the AI bot, for lack of a better term, for them to then put that into your answer. It's great fodder to have intelligent conversations with marketing agencies. It's just worth noting, like, hey, make a note. You're listening to this pod, make a note, and you're talking to marketing agencies, or you're doing your own content. What content will resonate with a Chat GPT or something like it? Back to Google. How important are Google reviews? How do you coach people to generate them, and really get the volume that you need?
Yeah, so reviews are a really critical way of people trusting you. So we have to kind of look at it as that mechanism of, it's how people start to trust your business, right? Trust your practice, because people will believe what other people say 10 times more than what you'll tell them. So reviews are really critical that way. Do they make a huge difference in your rankings? Somewhat, but not. There's a lot of other factors that go into it. So if you think that, hey, I'm just going to get 500 reviews and it's going to make me, number one on Google, that's not real, right? There's a lot of other factors that go into that. But having those reviews, and if they're good reviews, that's going to help people have a much different mindset as they start to interact with your website and call your clinic and all those kind of things. So it's almost like pre-selling people before they move in. So the ideal review that you want to try to generate is the transformational review. So, and there's one simple question that you can train all your therapists to ask, and that is, what can you do now that you couldn't do before? And that just gets the patient thinking in that whole transformational cycle. Well, I could barely walk and now I'm running a marathon, and that's like, the people love those transformational stories. So that's how your reviews are. People don't really care so much as like, oh, it's a wonderful place and Susie was really nice to me and blah, 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 right? Now, the transformational reviews are where it's at. So that one question, what can you do now that you couldn't do before, is just critical to teach your staff when they're asking for reviews. So when it comes to getting reviews, it's not one thing that's going to give you all the reviews. It's again, a system. You have to build this system within your practice and what works for you. And it might be different in like rural Alabama versus New York City, right? So you have to find out what works best for you. But traditionally, if you're just relying on automated systems to send out, hey, would you leave us a review? I think something like 5% of people actually fill those out, right? So the best reviews are the ones that you actually ask for within the clinic. And again, you have to train and have a process of, okay, how my therapist asking for this? What time would they, when would they ask for it? Same thing for my front desk. What kind of things do I have in the clinic, like QR codes or tap plates and things like that, just to kind of make it easy for people to leave a review as mechanisms. But the key thing I think to train your staff on when asking for a review is like looking for the best opportunity of when to ask for a review.
When is that?
It's not at discharge.
Yeah.
Right. It's that, again, that transformational moment. So we all know that we have those moments when we're training a patient, and it might be like the first visit, it might be the fifth visit. They're like, oh my gosh, I feel like so much better. Whatever you did yesterday, I can't believe it, blah, blah. That's the time to ask for review, right? Because they've had this transformation that's happened. So what we find is that if let's say that person gets an incredible result by their third visit, and then they keep coming, let's say for another 10 visits, for example, and they got stronger and better, and they feel good at the end, they're happy, but they're not as enthusiastic as they were at that third visit. And so it's harder for them to remember that transformation that they had, a month later, versus if you ask them that day, you're going to get much more powerful story out of them.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a lot of gold in that answer. One is you got to make it easy for your patients. You use tap plates. You use quick QR codes. So you got to have those there. And then I think it's really enlightening to hear, don't just wait for discharge. Too often there isn't okay, this is your last visit. Thanks so much. Oftentimes patient feels better. They don't come back because they don't need you anymore. That's a win, but you want to get it while the iron's hot. So I always say, like, if a patient is telling me how great another therapist is, I'm like, save it for your Google review. But now, like, go to that QR code and put it in now. So I think that's super valuable. Tell me about what you got going on at Practice Promotions and your new Market to Grow offering.
Yeah, fantastic. So at Practice Promotions, we help clinics, grow their practice with great marketing, right? So everything from websites, digital marketing, content, social media, even direct mail. So we have a great strategy out for clinics built around what we've seen over the last decade of successful practices, and a lot of things that we talked about here today. And we have a great book that I've built around that. So you can get our Market to Grow book, which has a strategy for market to grow, market to hire, and market to profit. Those are the kind of key three areas that you can leverage to grow your business and how you would market for each one of those things. And you can get that at our markettogrow.net website. It's free, and we'll send you out the book along with a marketing kit, and you'll get some great, insightful ideas around that. So it's the number 2, so like market and the numeral 2, grow.net.
Okay, awesome. Now, before you go, I'll ask you to help me, if you don't mind.
Mm-hmm.
What the hell are we doing wrong with our marketing efforts? What would you tell me that True Sports could get better at?
You have a lot of things that you're doing very well.
Don't give me the S sandwich, dude. Don't butter me up and then tell me how much I suck and then tell me how great I am. Just tell me.
Well, I mean, it's just, taking a peek around things online. I think you're, again, doing very well with stuff, but there's always room for improvement. Like, how can you level up, right? And that's the way that I was like, well, what can we do to take it to the next level? Online discoverability. I think this key areas there for certain clinics are probably doing really well. Some of the clinics are probably not doing as hot, right? So that's, always kind of looking at those 5 underperforming locations and what can we do to level them up from an online discoverability standpoint. Taking a good look at your heat maps on your website and just kind of, what are people doing? Like, how are they behaving? Are they dropping off at certain parts of my website? That would help me understand, how True Sports is doing that. You might have some of the analytics here, but looking at, are most people booking through the website, or are they booking through calls? And if they're booking a lot through the website, what's our percentage of people dropping off, at certain points of the booking procedure, right? So that can tell you a lot where we might be able to dial some things in from that perspective. And then I think you mentioned it before, but I'd be curious to understand like kind of what your patient marketing mechanisms are in place, what kind of email rhythms you have going out. Are you leveraging, what kind of audience building are you doing with your patients, right? In social media, are you leveraging any kind of direct mail capabilities, for certain things there for your patient marketing? So,
okay, awesome. I'm going to dive right into this. Mike in the background, I hope you wrote those things down because we're going to have a long conversation about that. Neil, this was fabulous. You taught me a ton. I think you taught the entire audience a ton. Let us know what you loved. If you're out there listening, just shoot me a quick DM, True Sports PT on Instagram. You can find Neil Practice Promotions. Give me the website.
Yeah, practicepromotions.net.
practicepromotions.net. Hit Neil up. He is an outstanding marketer. As he proved here, he can help to take your business to whatever level you want to get to. And it doesn't matter where you are now, he can help you grow. So check him out. Neil, thank you so much for your time, man. I really appreciate you.
Thank you, Yoni. Thank you for having me.
Pleasure. All right, guys, let us know. Can't wait to talk again soon. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.